So I'm gonna ride along this morning. I'm get up and do some hands-on. If you want some hands-on, great. If no, okay, good. If morning, Ruthie. Um, but there's very few moves this morning. I'll just briefly go over them. They're really minimal. Uh, Main reason for the minimalness of them, and at any point you can just, in fact, in any of this, you can just go, I'm on my own quest, I'm going to do my own thing. They're just suggestions. Because the main theme of this morning is not doing. And the real difficulty of that is that once you make a movement, a whole slew of other things happen in response to that movement. And the advantage of Dart is one of the things that is really great about Dart is that it slows everything down to such a degree that you can then notice what things move in response to the tiniest movement. Also, in response to this, there was the swamis, the yogis that came over like in the 70s, and they were doing things like slowing their heartbeat down, stopping their own heartbeat, directing heat to different parts of their bodies, all this kind of gubbins. And the takeaway from that for me in this is that what happens in here happens in here, and what happens in here happens in here. So the exchange between the two places is also another place to have fun with. And I've got a reading from Winnie the Pooh that I'm going to share with you. I may do that now or later. I don't know. But the point being that while you're breathing, track how you release in the body, but also track how you can do nothing in here. Really see how much you can not do. There are, like, I was just practicing this just now. I mean, I know it's kind of basic meditation, or you've probably done this in your own practices. But when I was just lying here, being definitely on the spectrum and slightly ADHD, my mind was like jumping from this to that to this to that to this to that, and how senses and breathing can help empty that, because while being in here, I am subject to my own stimulation. If I'm out here, this is happening to me. So it may be a way of coming to emptiness. So I'll show you briefly the things that we're going to do. So, of course, constructive rest to begin with. And as you undo everything or not do, you may have to adjust. You may have to adjust accordingly, which is a fine practice. Then just the action of moving the fingers and letting them fall out, it's great to see how this and this and this responds to that. I mean, I just did that very slowly, very quickly. If I slow it down and then even before I've moved my hand, I track what has responded. If I grow my fingers away, I listen to what has responded in that and let it go. That in itself is just getting the hand out there. Then you're gonna sink into the pelvis here and grab the knee and then see how much you can switch off in this position. Then in order to lower this leg, you bring this to this side and this to this side, and then just lower this leg. See if you can empty the leg out so that as it comes down, it's an empty foot that ends up coming into contact with the floor. And we'll do that on that leg and then that leg. Then extend and then do this, then come onto the side and empty along the side. Then we're going to be in the front and we'll spend a bit of time just in prone. And then there's going to be lengthening the arms out and lengthening the feet out. And then as you lengthen, you just reach a little bit further and then switch off. Then there's going to be some leg fun. Then coming up and then rising. And that is it. And we've done all of those moves before. And the familiarity with all those moves is great because you don't have to think too much about all of that. You can bring your focus directly and deeply into the result of each movement. I see my role is to just keep saying pause if you like and listen. I mean, staying still and doing nothing is really tricky. It's a challenge, yeah. So then staying still and listening to nothing, and then the slightest movement, then you go, oh, that's what gets switched on. Or when you move, it can suddenly then draw your mind to a place that's being switched on. So that's the fun challenge of this morning. Yeah, so I'm going to encourage slowing down breathing as well to begin with, and encourage mostly breathing through the nose. And yeah, I think I'll start off while you're in constructive rest. I'll just start off with this little section from Winnie the Pooh. It's from the house at Pooh Corner. And it's from the very last chapter, just before they before they leave the world of innocence. But anyway, Pooh's just been talking about what they've been doing and what they could do and what they like doing. What's the best thing that they like doing? And Christopher Robin says, but what I like best is doing nothing. How do you do nothing? Asked Pooh after he had wondered for a long time. Well, it's when people call out at you just as you're going off to do it. What are you going to do, Christopher Robin? And then you say, oh, nothing. And then you go and do it. Oh, I see, said Pooh. This is a nothing sort of thing that we're doing now. Oh, I see, said Pooh again. It means just going along, listening to all the things you can't hear, and not bothering. Oh, said Pooh. It means just going along, listening to all the things you can't hear, and not bothering. And I find bothering an interesting word. You know that phrase, I can't be bothered. So bothering is a kind of fantastic encapsulation of physical and mental. So while you're lying here, a slightly different focus of feeling the sensation of the point where the back of the head meets the floor or the wooden block. And begin the practice of noticing what is being done and what you can cease to do. The muscles and the bones. The tongue. The pathway down the back of the nose, the passageway. The muscles in the back of the neck. The pathway all the way into the lungs. See if you can allow yourself the luxury of emptiness of thought. And then bring your mind's eye to the shoulder blades. And as a result of the shoulder blades being in contact with the floor, and the points of the elbow on either side. See if you can sense the muscles that are engaged and the muscles that can be released as a result of the contact with the floor. The pectorals, the biceps, the shoulder blades, the trapezius, I find the bones and the muscles of the hand kind of permanently switched on. See if you can, on the out breath, switch them off. And this can be quite often a result of allowing the idea of lengthening through the system. To provide a sensation of release. And continue to track when there are clouds of thought that are passing by. And bring your mind's eye, if you wish, to the points in the pelvis and the 3 points in each foot. And continue to let the sensation of the floor inform release. Okay, if I use my hands really. And this practice of doing nothing can also be that when I say, okay, this idea of moving a hand or moving the fingers or any prompt, you can not do or even track what the idea of doing then does, so that you can undo that initial response. And that's what Alexander called inhibition, the idea of interrupting a habitual response to a direction so that you can then choose a direction. So the tips of the fingers begin to peel away from the torso, leaving the elbow to be the root, to be the stimulus that holds ground, and the shoulder blades, of course. But as the fingers peel away from the torso, you can ask yourself, what can I let go of as a result of this movement? Or even track the very beginning of the movement. And I'm going to suggest some possible pathways of thought that happen as a result of that movement. There's the back of the forearm, there's the triceps, there's the biceps. There's also pulling across the shoulder blades, pulling the shoulders. There's that point from the sternum, which may be shortening, and maybe holding in your butt, or the very movement of the fingertips. Maybe there may be a mirror in your toes. There may be consternation in your face, maybe tightening in the tongue. So see, as you let the fingers come up towards the ceiling, see if you are able to, in your mind's eye, wander into the place of recognizing those aberrant responses to the movement, and at any point pausing and completely undoing that. Listening to the sounds you can't hear. And that can apply to feelings you can't feel. And at the end point of the movement, you can continue to explore the aftermath of that movement. What has changed in the organism? What has changed in your mind's eye? And if it all gets a bit complicated, return to breathing so that you merely breathe out a little longer than you breathe in, and slow down the breathing so that the breathing itself contributes to the pace of the meditation and the pace of your thinking. There are points of emptiness in the system at the top of the breath and at the bottom of the breath. They're like brief pauses, brief places of suspension. Brief points of emptiness and fullness. It's okay if I use my hands. You're right. And then you can, if you wish, fold one knee up towards you. Actually, you just allow this to be, so if you bring your arms out to the side and let your arms just relax along the length of the floor just for a minute. If you so choose, so that just take a moment of once again returning to zero. And then the next prompt is to fold one of the legs in towards you, and you can sink into the pelvis in order to let that fold happen. And just clasp your hands around your knee and rest it there. And the idea in this position is to encourage the femur to come into the pelvis. And in that, there's a kind of suspension bridge thing going on between your hands and your knee and the whole system there. So see if you use this point of tension to see if you can just elongate in that position. And then you can slip one hand down to the outside of that leg, and the other hand down slides down to the crease on the outside of the leg or the inside, but the outside is kind of fun from a suspension point of view. And then gradually lower that leg down and see if you can lower it in such a way that the foot is completely empty, as well as everything else being empty, of course. And then let that foot just spread. And then note the difference of feeling between one side of the body and the other. And then begin the same process on the other side. While you're in that position, also have a sense of that place between the rib cage and the top of the pelvis, and how that can melt and open in response to the knee being up there. And then in your own time, just allow that hand to slide down the outside of the thigh, and you can also let the opposite arm just suspend the knee and just slowly release. and bring that foot to the floor. And the thing about the hands being there is they can feel the tension in the leg. That kind of signaling to the nervous system can then once again say, okay, do nothing. And then you're going to let one hand drift up over above your head. You look under that armpit and you're going to roll over onto your side. And this turning, once again, is a real fun place of exploration. What wants to turn? What do you want to turn? At any point in the turn, you can just pause and ask for release. Then when you're on your side, can bring your mind's eye to that entire length either side. And you can look over the other shoulder and roll onto the back. And you can just hold up your precious skull and take the block from underneath. Get that out of the way. And then you're going to roll over onto the other side. And in some ways, this is very punk. It's very punk rock. As you can, to anything, in the words of Christopher Robin, not be bothered. So you can say, well, I can't be bothered with that prompt. I can't be bothered with that state of tension in my forearm. I can't be bothered with the troubles and trials and tribulations that are coming through my mind. I can just return to trying to hear something that isn't there. In doing nothing, you end up with a deep listening. And then you can just shunt yourself a little bit back onto your towel in whatever state you wish to take yourself onto the towel. So it may be that midway through the movement, you want to just listen to see if you're being bothered. And in coming into prone, see if you can have your forehead in contact with the floor in such a way that you can lengthen across the back of the neck and that you're free to breathe through the nose, and that the passageway down the back of the nose is open because the tongue is free in the mouth. It's filling the mouth and opening that airway. And then you can invite your fingers to reach up above your head along the floor, and just creepy crawly along the floor, and bring your toes together, and just creepy crawly your toes together. And as you grow along this line, there'll come a point where that's as far as you can grow. And then in that position, just ask the body to undo. Hmm. And in this position, you can begin to play with one foot, just tilting it one way or another, drawing little arcs across the ceiling with your heel. And that spiral that goes up and down the length of the leg and into the pelvis and into the low back, and you might be able to sense it go all the way into the back of the head. May sense it go into the fingers. See if you can isolate the doing from non-doing. Yeah. There's also a fun prompt from Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen about the spiral of the leg as opposed to the turning of the femur in the socket. And there is something about the spiral of the lower leg, the searching of the toes, and then the instigation of the movement. In the socket of the femur and the pelvis. And then, if you like, you can move to the other leg. And the same process. Is that okay if I use my hands? Okay. So having this sense of emptiness and non-doing, and the practice of that even if you are creating movement, even if you are responding to stimulus, even if you are actually taking an action, you can develop the habit of undoing in response to that action. And the great thing about prone is that it really informs you about the thickness of your spine. So as you come up into a crawling position, you bring your hands underneath your armpits in order to come into a crawling position. You're gonna imagine that the whole spine is coming back in a, what is it, parallelogram to the floor. At the back of your head, it's as if the ceiling is the floor into which you're bringing the back of your head. And as you come up, continue to clock how you can undo as you go. And it's an opportunity in this ascension to look for moments where you can pause and say, okay, am I overdoing it? And crawling is so awesome for that, because of the spirals and the exchange of weight, the movement of the femur in the socket, the expansion across the back, the foreshortening, the possible foreshortening across the front. And you can say to that foreshortening, hey, I just can't be bothered with that at the moment. I'd like to just let that go. And of course, as soon as you begin to come up onto two legs, then maybe the butt muscles and all those guys decide to overdo it. So, just say, hey, I don't need that at the moment. I can just let all that go. Continuing to breathe through the nose. So at any point, if you require guidance from anything in coming to upright, it can be through oxygenated, CO2-inated breathing. Stacking the released foot, the released ankle, the released knee, the released femur, the released sacrum, the released base of the skull, the released sternum, and go for a walk, but a doing nothing walk. Thank you, friends.